So I'm Ernie. I'm CTO of JetTrade and Jupiter Chain. So JetTrade is our parent company. So my experience in blockchain has always been in research. I've been doing research on Bitcoin since late 2013, 2014, after which I actually moved to IBM Blockchain Research, where I did blockchain applications for enterprises. And recently, about 2 months ago, I left IBM and I joined Jupiter Chain. And we created the Jupiter Chain project. So the Jupiter Chain project consists of both a public blockchain and a private blockchain network. It's a hybrid model. I'll talk a bit more about that later. So the topic today is about designing and architecting blockchain. And I'm going to use Jupiter Chain as an example on how we actually create that concept. So to give a bit of background and on our use case, JetTrade is a supply chain finance company, and we work with financial institutions in ASEAN, in regions like Vietnam, in Philippines, and even in Malaysia, where we look at helping financial services, so not the big banks, but financial services like third-tier banks digitize and help their clients. And what we noticed is that in the region and in a lot of developing countries, financing solutions are untailored and they are very generic. Right? So for example, a microfinance loan, everyone gets the same interest rate. Everyone has to pay very high, very exorbitant interest rates, in fact, for microfinance. I don't know if you know that, on average, the interest rate per annum for a microfinance loan is between 20 to 30% per annum. So it's very expensive because everything is untailored. They don't look at the data of the users. They don't look at your credit. They give you a loan as is. Right, so if we think about developed countries, financing is a given. Everyone, like I can go to a bank, look for a loan, say I want to buy a house, and they can look at my data and give me a certain rate. So that is a big problem, and as we build solutions for these financial institutions, we realize there's a need to bring on data of individuals in these regions to help them get access to better financial services, and more specifically, to get access to tailored financial services. So that is the key pain point and the key problem statements. We have large incumbent organizations owning all the data. The data of unbanked and underserved market is very fragmented and is not digitized. Traditional financial service providers assign very low priority to this segment. Right, so no one wants to really lend to the poor or to the underserved because the margin is very low, risk is very high. Right, so these are all very big problems. And as we build up and strategize about the blockchain platform, what we decided we needed to do is to create a global network that can help connect local economies and create a world federation of data to bridge between developed and the developing world, reducing the gaps and creating an inclusive world. Right, and our mission is to ultimately enable inclusive finance for the masses and channel equal opportunities to the underserved. Now, as we built this project, we realized that the project that we are building has a much larger scope, and the scope in the sense that what we wanted to do is to really think about a new paradigm for the data economy. Right, if we think about the data economy now, and what a lot of VCs have been investing into are companies like Uber, companies like Airbnb, because they see the potential in the data. But if we look at data regulation and how that is changing, we realize that these large companies are going to be very limited in how they can use the data and how they can monetize the data. If you've been following the GDPR, which is the European regulation on personal data privacy, you'll notice a company can only use data if they have explicit permission on how they want to use it. So for example, when a bank collects data from their customer, they have to tell them, I'm going to use your data to do credit scoring. And then they can only use it for credit scoring. They cannot use it for anything else. And the user can at any time revoke their access. Say, they can call up the bank and say, forget about me, remove every piece of data about me. Right? So in that sense, once this comes into play, it's going to be very hard for a centralized company to monetize data of their users. And so what we are proposing is a solution we call Jupiter Chain. So we call it the Smart Consentable Data Exchange. So I'm going to explain to you a bit on what that really means. Right, so there's 3 components to the platform. I'm going to start from the bottom up. So Jupyter Chain is a data exchange, and we use a federated blockchain model. So it's a very similar concept to sharding, right? Because use cases for us are very obviously within local jurisdictions, right? And in a lot of countries, there are data residency laws. So for example, in Indonesia, you are not allowed to bring data of Indonesians out of the country. So what our approach is a federated blockchain model. So if you follow Ethereum and you follow the sharding concept, it's very similar. We have side chains or local blockchains that operate within the country or within the use case. And we have a public mainnet, which we call the Jupyter chain, that links up all these local blockchains and local side chains. So the public mainnet focuses on transactions between the local blockchains. It focuses on transactions, and it focuses on data requests. So the payload on the public main chain will be very light, whereas on the side chains, they will be more data heavy and they'll be more focused on the data. So for the side chains, what we are going to use are permission style blockchains. So we are looking at solutions like Quorum or like Hyperledger. And for the main chain, we are looking at the public style blockchains, which can help us actually link up this local ecosystem. So Ethereum is definitely something that we are looking at in terms of the work that they've been doing on sharding and creating sidechains such as the Plasma project or the Raiden projects. Right, so once we've created a data exchange, what we want to enable ultimately on these local ecosystems is the idea of consentable data. So consentable data means empowering the users. So we want to empower the users, and we want to approach this in a very practical manner. So what we are proposing is to encrypt the data as it enters the blockchain, and we manage the access by a rights management engine. So we are going to use distributed key management on the system. We are going to allow users to directly consent to the use of the data. So for example, when I go to a bank and I ask for a loan, I can give permission directly to the bank to access my data on the blockchain to do a credit assessment on me. Right, so another part of consentable is data collection. So when a data analytics company like Thomson Reuters want to access my data or data of an individual in Vietnam or in the Philippines, what they can do is to create smart contracts as a data collection service. So they deploy it as a kind of survey company. What they will do is then request individuals to provide access to their data and reward them directly with tokens. So that's part of our token economics, right? And then individuals can get directly incentivized to be participating in the economy, in the ecosystem, and to also be actually be the ones who really benefit for getting their data to be used. Right now, Facebook or Google can use your data without even paying you a single cent. Right, so the final layer of it is the smart layer, which is what we are trying to push and what we are trying to do a lot of research on, which is the idea of privacy-preserving analytics on the blockchain. So the two examples I mentioned earlier, smart contract as a credit assessment module, and smart contracts as a data subscription service. So how can we impose privacy on these kind of modules? Right, so if we think about a bank and when they want to do credit assessment on you, the banks really just want to know if you are credit worthy. They don't really want to know your actual information. They don't want to know how much you spend every week in groceries and all this. But they need to collect this information because they need to do the credit score. Now, if we use blockchain to actually enforce trusted data into the blockchain and into the database, the banks can trust the data source. What they need to do is then just simply deploy a smart contract to execute the algorithm and to return them the credit score. So in essence, the bank will no longer need to know your raw information. They can actually get your credit score directly without having to know the private details about you. Right, so what we are exploring right now, because running this fully on-chain will not be easy because your data, once it's decrypted on-chain, it gets exposed. So we are looking at executions of trusted execution environments where we put the smart contract on the blockchain, but we run the execution in a trusted environment within a server. And that trusted environment will forget the data as it gets processed. So that's the idea behind it. And it's the same idea for the data subscription service. Right, so the AI modules or the machine learning modules or engines will not need to see the raw data, but able to process your data and provide the parameters back into the engine. So that's the idea of the smart consentable data exchange. I think I reached my 10 minutes. So that's a quick idea on what we are doing. So our first use case is in inclusive finance. We have some token economics. We welcome you to visit our website. It's called jupiterchain.tech to find out more, and you can talk to me after this as well. Right. So there could be future applications of this other than inclusive finance. We can look at health, we can look at social networks, and we ultimately want to build an AI marketplace. And that's the vision behind the Jupiter Chain platform. All right, thank you very much.